I want to talk to you guys today about judgment. Um, we all know this feeling of judgment, especially I think now probably more than ever, right? This feeling of like sitting on a pedestal and looking down at all the people who don't agree with you. The feeling that our opinion and then therefore us, the feeling that like we are identified with our opinion, and so therefore we have the answers and somebody else doesn't. And this can throw us into like this weird haze of feeling that somebody else is like ignorant or in need of moral correction, um, or evil altogether, right? We kind of like put ourselves up so that everybody else is down, and what that does is it prevents us from looking at ourselves. When we judge, we kind of feel like we're winning, right, in a way, however subtle that may be. It doesn't have to be, overt. Although when we judge, it does feel good, to win if somebody else is reaffirming that. But the thing is that when we judge, we feel like we're winning. We don't even have to be in an argument with somebody else. We can just be talking shit about them behind their back, and then we still will feel like we're winning, right? And so if somebody else comes and says, yeah, you know what, I agree with you, now that feels like they're on our team, right? And that elevates our status even more. Judgment is this weird, like, self-perpetuating, self-reinforcing thing that our egos do, because when we win through judgment, we get more reinforcement, and so we just keep going on and on and on. So judgment can come in a couple different forms, or actually it can be fueled by a couple of different things that I want us to be aware of, right? The first one is confirmation bias. So confirmation bias can look like you're Googling something and you're only looking at the facts that support your opinion, right? You are aligned with a political party and you don't give honestly, like open-mindedly give the other side even a chance before you already are making your own opinion. This could be a fight with your significant other, right? Where you've been entrenched in your idea and you don't even listen to what they say because you're responding already within your head. Does that make sense? So also our cancel culture, like essentially canceling out, deleting friends because they didn't believe in, or because they disagreed with you, or deleting friends because they are on a different side, right? That's our cancel culture. And like all that does, that confirmation bias, is just reinforce our judgments. It reinforces what we think. Judgment can also look like commiserating with a friend over an unfortunate circumstance, or what you think that you've been wrong, right? Maybe you've been wronged or something like that. So like if you are sitting with your coworker and you're talking about your boss and how you think your boss is a micromanager, that's a form of judgment. If you are talking with your spouse about, I don't know, some gossipy thing that happened in the neighborhood, that's a form of judgment, right? We have to be aware of these things, because when we can catch ourselves in it, we can know, like, okay, I'm participating in judgment right now. So judgment comes from your ego, right? So your ego thinks that there's only right and wrong. Your belief system is what shapes what you believe is right and wrong. So your belief system is shaped by your culture, your religion. You can even be shaped by your education, what your parents told you when you were younger, right? These all form our framework of how we think the world should be. And then when we have this framework, our egos like to fit us into that box, and then anything else outside of that box is wrong, right? And so what that does is it prevents us from expanding. And so what it does, and it also gives us license to mistreat, discard, cancel, reject people who don't agree with us, right? It gives us like license to stand on the other side and say, I've got the answers, you do not, and therefore you're not as good as me, or you're not worthy of, my attention, or you're not worthy to hear your side of the story, or voice your side of the story, right? This is what judgment does. And essentially what it does is it keeps us hidden from ourselves. So it does this in two ways. The first way is that we don't have to admit that maybe we could be wrong, right? In judgment, we assume we have all the answers. We assume that we have all the information we need to know in order to make the right decision. And therefore, we don't need any more information in order to make that a different decision, right? So we avoid the fact that maybe we could be wrong, right? And so what that does is it keeps our ego box intact, and we don't have to step outside of that. And then, and we don't expand. Essentially, we don't grow through that. The second way is that it keeps your shadow hidden, right? Your shadow being this, like the deeper, underlying reasons why you do what you do. And so the thing is that you could have something in your shadow where you unconsciously, are not open-minded, right? And so if you're not open-minded and you're judging somebody else for not being open-minded, then you don't have to look at yourself for not being open-minded, right? You just get to point the finger at somebody else and say, you're not open-minded, and that's a wrong thing, right? But through our judgments, we prevent ourselves from looking at ourselves and unearthing these shadow aspects of ourselves that would help us align more with the people that we want to be, right? The thing is that we have to recognize that our judgments have served to keep us protected, right? Our judgments have probably in a lot of ways protected us, maybe when somebody else wasn't willing to stand up for us, maybe when we couldn't stand up for ourselves, right? Maybe when we didn't have that wherewithal to stand on our own authority and say that this is what I believe, right? And so our judgments have served us in the way that they've helped preserve us, right? That's a very ego thing to do. That's self-preservation, but that exists for a reason, right? It's very humbling to come face to face with the things that, maybe are inconsistent in your life, where you say, I believe this, but then I act this way. If we expose that all the time, like that can get really uncomfortable, right? And so we have to recognize that through our judgments, that protects us sometimes, that preserves us in some ways. However, ultimately, for our own liberation, we have to let it go, right? We have to allow our judgments to be released. And that's because our judgments cover up the things that we need to see in order to grow and expand, right? We need to ask ourselves, where have we been inconsistent in our beliefs and our actions, right? What have I been doing that, I've been judging others for doing, right? And what would we find beneath our judgments? Is there a voice there? Like, is there somebody else's voice there? Was it a parent? Was it a religious connotation, right? Is it true, right? We need to ask ourselves these things, and through these questions, we can then start to expand. In the following meditation, we're going to work to release some of our judgments. And actually, I just want you to work with one at a time, because here's the thing. And actually, so let me just back up for a second. That one judgment that I want you to work with is something a little easier. If you just start there, right? So say you have some kind of like emotionally charged judgment against somebody who has seriously wronged you or betrayed you or done something like very, very, hurtful. I don't recommend starting with that, because the thing is that underneath that judgment can be like so many more judgments. And what it can feel like is we're spinning our wheels if that judgment isn't able to be released, right? If we're not able to grow through that as quickly as we'd want to, right? So my recommendation is just to pick something, at least at the outset, pick something a little more neutral. pick the lady in front of you at the grocery store who got up to the checkout and now is digging in her purse for a checkbook, or something like that. Pick the person who wore the wrong outfit, right? Like that, pick those kinds of judgments. I would recommend don't start with the things that, really get to the core of you. I mean, obviously we want to go there, but in due time, right? And as always, in this meditation, I think I use words like God or universe. Take what fits, take what applies to you, and then leave the rest. My hope and my wish for all of us, as it was for me, or as it is for me, universally, my hope is not so much that we stop judging altogether. I mean, although that's maybe ideal, it's just, could we start to recognize when we're starting to go down the judgment path, as we're going to unfriend somebody who doesn't believe what we believe? Could we stop and take a minute and say, is this expanding me or is this contracting me? Is this making me evolve, or is this keeping me where I'm at? Is this keeping me stuck? And in those moments that we realize that, oh, okay, I'm passing judgment, and maybe this isn't serving us, those small moments are when we grow. Those small moments are when we expand, right? So that's my hope for you. And sit in a comfortable position and just bring your attention to your breath. Take 3 or 4 cleansing breaths before closing down your eyes. And just sit here for a minute and observe your thoughts. And as they come up, just let each one of them go. Then consciously set the intention to be as present as possible during this meditation. And if it's for the best interest of all beings everywhere, that perhaps a previously held judgment will be released. And just keep breathing. Now bring to mind a judgment that you have had and have not let go yet. Maybe it was judging someone for their line of thinking. Perhaps it was a difference in political opinion. Maybe it was a slow driver in the left lane, or the woman ahead of you in line who can't find her checkbook. Just keep breathing as you feel this judgment rising. What does this judgment feel like to you? Pay attention in your body. Does it feel expansive or constricting? Do you feel tightness in your neck? Maybe in your chest? Or does it feel relaxed? And what does it feel like in your head? What about your gut or your solar plexus? And just for a moment, consider what it would feel like if you dropped the defenses of this judgment. You don't need to let the judgment go yet. Just entertain the idea of what would happen if you did let it go. What arises without your defenses of this judgment in place? What emotions are there? Is it shame, embarrassment, or maybe fear? Or does it just generally feel uncomfortable? Perhaps it's a sense of peace. What's there? What's underneath that judgment? And now consider, who does your judgment affect more? Is it you? Or is it the person, thing, or circumstance that you're judging? If your judgment did have a negative impact, what would it be? Think of all the ways that this judgment is toxic, both for you and everyone involved. And now consider what positive impact your judgment has had. Has it protected you? Has it allowed to stand up for yourself when no one else would? Has it given you a sense of self-preservation? And now, say this prayer to the universe, or ask your highest self. What in me has my judgment prevented me from seeing? What piece of my shadow would like to come to the light? How would releasing this judgment help me to more fully embody the person that I would like to be? And then as we close this session, keep this prayer on your heart. Say, Universe, I thank you for giving me my judgment because it has protected and served me in so many ways. If it is for the highest good of all, I pray that my judgment would be released so that I can grow and evolve. If I am ready, I pray that whatever I need to see is revealed to me. I pray for strength when it is difficult to face shame, guilt, or embarrassment that has been covered up by my judgment for so long. I pray that I be held by the universe and that I continue to accept myself exactly as I am. Stay in this space for as long as you'd like.